This time on the Plutopia podcast, blogger and author Susan McCarthy, a noted authority on apologies, helps us perform a verbal autopsy on the worldwide Crowdstrike security meltdown. Unlike most large outages, the Crowdstrike outage impacted individual workstations, Microsoft Windows workstations. In the aftermath, Crowdstrike apologized and even offered a $10 Uber Eats voucher. Susan found the Crowdstrike apology somewhat lacking.
I think that if they apologized better, it could have serious value for their company and help keep them from going under, for example. I think if they were very serious about and since the reparations step is part of what we think makes a good apologies, I think they would take a huge financial hit if they did decent reparations, and which their shareholders would not like. But I think they could do that. I think that would make people trust the company more, that it was willing to take a huge financial hit when it caused huge financial hits for its customers.
Welcome everybody to the latest episode of the Plutopia podcast. I'm John Lepkowski. My friend there, Scoop Sweeney, is my partner in crime, really. And our co-host is Wendy Grossman. And our guest today is Susan McCarthy, who's a journalist, an author, and a blogger. She writes about wildlife, animal behavior, humor, and climate action, and about apologies. And she's an instigator with Marjorie Engel of the Sorry Watch website that kind of critiques apologies. So welcome, Susan. How are you doing?
Thank you. Yes. As Wendy points out, it is my professional obligation to point out that Marjorie and I have a book out now. The hardback is called Sorry, 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 and the highly affordable paperback is called Getting to Sorry. Our tip is, if you're going to give one of these books to somebody, say to them, you don't need this, but there's some good stories in here.
I like that.
So the paperback has a different name?
Yeah, we changed the name because we were getting a fair amount of interest from business, asking us to do podcasts and workshops and so forth. And Getting to Sorry calls back to some popular business titles like Getting to Know and Getting to Yes.
Yeah, business-related apologies are in short supply sometimes.
Yep.
Well, we kind of convened today to talk about at least one corporate apology. As many people listening to this may remember, in mid-July of 2024, a bunch of airports and hospital booking services in the UK and banking services and all sorts of things got sort of paralyzed for a time, which varied depending on how fast they were able to fix things, because the security company Crowdstrike had sent out an update to Microsoft Windows PCs that it was contracted to supply, and they had failed to test the update and sent it out all at once. Instead of the best practice is to send out is to update a few things and make sure that they're working properly before you do a staged rollout instead of a big bang kind of rollout. And so we're now a couple of weeks on from this event, and we're not seeing the pictures of crowded airports and stranded passengers anymore. But Delta Airlines estimates that the outage cost them $500 million, which is, you have enough of those, you get a lot of money. And they are complaining that they haven't heard from Crowdstrike. Crowdstrike didn't offer them anything, but it did sort of offer the world some kind of apology, and we thought that Susan should analyze it for us.
Yeah, well, I hear that this is one of the biggest IT blunders in history so far, and that the total bill is more like $5 billion.
I think that's just an initial estimate. I'm sure that will be dwarfed by the eventual uh, total figure. But I mean, Microsoft said that 8.5 million PCs were affected, but it turns out that they only know about the ones that had crash reporting turned on. Well, lots of companies don't turn that on because they don't want to. I don't know. They don't want to risk information about their computer systems being sent out to other people.
It's
So,
something where, yeah, where what you would think would be a tiny mistake because they had a bad template file and they bypassed their staging system, I think, for this template instance, I should say. And um, you wouldn't think it would cause a problem, right? But it passed something to Microsoft that caused
I don't think it did.
thousands of computers
No, it didn't pass it to Microsoft. It passed it directly to to the machines that were under contract.
Well, I thought it passed it to the Microsoft kernel
Well, but the Microsoft kernel isn't the company.
operating
The
system.
kernel would be the kernel of the operating system on each machine. And the real problem with it is that the fix is, whereas the update went out at scale, the
Uh-huh.
fix has to be done one machine at a time manually because you can't just turn the machine off and turn it back on again because then it reboots and it loads the faulty software and then it crashes right away.
Right,
So
right.
what you have to do is turn it on in safe mode and then manually go to the right directory and delete some files and then restart it. And so that's why it takes a long time because it's, millions of PCs and, X number of technical support guys.
But they apologized.
But they apologize and they sent a gift. Take it
Yeah,
away.
so we have an apology from the CEO, George Kurtz, and it's not too bad, although let's just say it seems clear that CrowdStrike is really sorry this happened. But one commenter on CSO said, yes, he apologizes, but he dances around. He plays with words to avoid responsibility. He says, we found a defect in the Falcon content update for Windows host, as if the defect was a naturally occurring phenomenon discovered by his staff. And there was also a long apology from the chief security officer. And it started with many, many paragraphs about his illustrious history and the company's illustrious history. And then it was like, well, yeah, we failed you, but we're going to come back stronger than ever and it will be great. And then, as Wendy mentions, they sent a lot of people $10 Uber Eats gift certificates and said, we're really sorry, have a cup of coffee on us, which was not helped when a lot of people went to redeem those certificates and Uber wouldn't honor them because there were so many of them. There had to be something wrong.
I was just reading that there was uh, a lot of discussion in the financial markets about the possibility CrowdStrike could go under as a result of these various lawsuits that are already pending. And that may be a reason that they're being kind of quiet because they may be plotting an exit strategy for how they get out of that company because, $500 million is pretty rough for
That's
a
just Delta.
company.
And that's just Delta.
Yeah, yeah. And there's
I mean, there were a
plenty
lot of other
more.
airlines that were affected.
Well, apparently their contract limits them to refunding the fees that you paid to get CrowdStrike services. It doesn't say that we will pay for all those angry passengers in airports around the world
Right.
demanding flight refunds.
And this is a long-standing issue in the industry, is that software manufacturers do not accept liability for their products. Any software you pay for, you will find in the click wrap or the shrink wrap a disclaimer saying that they don't warrant anything.
Yeah,
And
but several people at Delta are going to get free cups of coffee.
right, but the point is that the question of whether manufacturers should be accepting liability for software has been running for a long time. The security engineer Ross Anderson, who died recently in this country at Cambridge, spent years arguing that software liability should come in because you write a book in Microsoft Word and Word decides to eat the manuscript just as you're completing it. Microsoft has no liability for that.
Well, the actual software isn't the real problem. The lack of quality assurance testing prior to the rollout, that's basically a criminal offense, in my opinion. One of my early IT jobs in corporate IT was in quality assurance testing, to where you radically test the product before you even get anywhere near a production environment. And they obviously felt that was unnecessary.
Yeah, apparently they felt that it was similar enough to something that had already been released that it would not cause a problem. So they bypassed the staging that they normally do that would have caught it. That was my understanding anyway, in reading their explanation.
It's not clear to me if this decision was made by badly designed software or by a human or humans, but they're certainly trying to figure that out. I want to focus on their apology because apparently apologies in cybersecurity are rare. And so a lot of people are going, oh, wow, they apologized. But although the apology was semi-good, as we discussed, it kind of doesn't discuss like the causation, the responsibility for it. And when you don't know yet, then you say, we don't know yet, we're going to find out. You don't just try to avoid the subject. The $10 gift certificates that some people got, people who were having to do those manual resets that Wendy was describing, that's kind of insulting. One guy on Reddit said, yesterday I was going to drive my car off a bridge, and, this cup of coffee is not helping me. It's, reminiscent of an apology that was made by the chef Mario Batali, where he ended his public apology online with a recipe for cinnamon pizza rolls. And that's adding insult to injury, $10.
Cinnamon pizza sounds like a pretty bad thing.
Somebody made it and they said it was, but I'm not going to risk it. Then, as Wendy pointed out, they tried another thing, which was just as dumb, where they offered a prize. They said, we're offering a $10,000 prize for the people who fixed this fastest. And well, it turned out they were offering a $5,000 prize with $3,000 and a $2,000 for runners up. They wanted you to send in screenshots of your trouble tickets. That's, again, it's pretty insulting. And I understand they would like this to go away, but it's not going to go away that quickly.
No, and especially if they keep releasing things like that, it's just going to prolong. I'm sure they've got now some PR person who's telling them, look, don't dig your hole any deeper by offering more stupid gifts. But it does strike me as a very tech bro kind of thing that their thoughts, the company's thoughts, insofar as a company can think, went directly to the guys who were sitting at the desk rebooting all these PCs and deleting files and having to remediate the computer systems. They don't seem to have thought at all, because those are their customers, right? We are just hostages to their system. We are not their customers. But the media's thoughts and most of our thoughts go to the people who are stuck in the airport, because after all, eventually the tech support guys are actually paid to do that job, and they are actually paid, or their pay should include some recognition that once in a while there's going to be a crisis that requires them to work weekends. Sure. But nobody buys a plane ticket intending to be stuck in an airport for 2 days.
I never do, but Yeah, there's already, people writing to the newspaper and saying, Delta left me stranded and what do I do? They said they'd give me a credit, but I don't want a credit. And the advice is, you know what? They have to give you a refund and they have to tell you that you can get a refund. So they're criticizing Delta for not being transparent about what options are available to customers. So this, Delta is suing CrowdStrike. This is just gonna.
And Delta, I happened to buy a plane ticket this week, and I noticed for the first time, American Airlines has started charging an extra £100 if you
Ooh,
want to be able to get a cash refund for your ticket if something goes wrong. So the ticket price is just the ticket, and if something goes wrong and you get airline credit, you have to pay an extra £100 in order to have the option of getting the refund in cash. Now I can't believe that's legal, um, but I'm not sure that I don't know that it's not. And but it shows you kind of where airlines are going with this, which is, basically they don't want to ever have to give money back.
of course not. Of course not.
Yeah.
That really messes with their business. I think we're going to see nested lawsuits. People suing clients of CrowdStrike, who then the clients then turn around and sue CrowdStrike. So indeed, it really is a question of how CrowdStrike will recover from this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole issue of Delta, being totally harmed, uh, that's probably going to change because there's already investigations into how they reacted to the whole situation. Because all the other, pretty much all the other airlines and businesses recovered a lot more quickly than Delta did, and a lot of people are saying the problem was more with how they deal with delays and cancellations in general. And so they just were caught in a really big delay and cancellation situation. And I have a feeling there's probably going to be some changes in who's to blame.
Yeah, yeah, I think that sounds so probable. And so the question that I ask myself, because I'm so focused on apology, is what impact, if any, will these apologies have on the reaction? And it's interesting that a lot of the industry is going, wow, amazing, they apologized right away. We never do that. I think that's, I don't know that that's going to help the bottom line. But then when they went and made these, insulting little $10 offers and contests and things like that, that's going to get a lot of people really angry at them. And again, this is at the level of people who are doing the manual fixes, as opposed to the people waiting in airlines who didn't even get offered a cup of coffee.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very strange thing because usually you see this argument in medicine that the doctor doesn't apologize to the patient he's harmed because the hospital tells him that it makes it more likely that the patient will sue because he's admitting he did something wrong.
Which is not
Whereas
the
in
case.
fact, what happens when the doctor doesn't talk to the patient, then the patient gets angry and feels betrayed. And they're more likely to sue than if the doctor actually sat down with them and said, look, here's what went wrong.
That's right. Yeah. I don't know how powerful a constituency, all the people who are having to stay late and put in on the weekends to manually fix the problem are. I know that because of the timing of the outage, which lasted, or outage of the glitch, which lasted 79 minutes, there was a lot more impact in Asia than in the US, for example.
Right.
So, but I don't know.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
I did see some statistics about where the most reports came from, and the most reports came from the U.S.
interesting, because they sent it out at midnight and then they stopped doing that 79 minutes later. So some people whose computers were sleeping didn't get the update, but luckily for them.
Well, remember that first of all, a lot of businesses are 24/7.
Right.
Second of all, I would guess that it seems to me possible as a theory that a greater percentage of the computers based in the US would be signed up for, would be giving Microsoft crash protection than maybe computers based elsewhere, just because it's a different country.
Right. Right. That definitely seems possible.
Uh,
I would also say that both the big cyber CrowdStrike apologies have a fairly strong focus on this was not a cyber attack. Don't be frightened. It was not a cyber attack. It was just us messing up, or it was just a mess up that we inadvertently sent to you.
right. Well, protecting people against cyber attack is their main business.
Correct.
What do you
So
think about the fact that people were
remember
blaming Microsoft?
I think that was just confusion.
Yeah.
Because, the computer doesn't start and it keeps giving you a blue screen of death. Your first reaction is to assume it's something wrong with the computer. And then your first reaction is normally to blame Microsoft because that's the thing you can see.
Yeah, the blue screen of death.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just, I think so many people at so many levels feel such despair when they see a blue screen of death.
Well, and then Microsoft says it's not our problem, it's CrowdStrike's problem. And I'm sure they were a little bit suspicious of that. And it took a while for it to sink in that it really was CrowdStrike's problem. I thought that the way that Microsoft responded was a little cold, and that they should have shown maybe a little more empathy with the people who were suffering at the time.
How was it cold?
They just basically said, well, it wasn't our problem, it was CrowdStrike's problem. They just
No,
kind
it's your
of
problem.
shuffled it over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what would you think would have been a better response?
Well, I think they could have said that they appreciate the fact that people are having significant problems and that Microsoft has been implicated in it, but really it wasn't something that we did. It was something that happened with somebody else, and we're working with them to try to get the problem solved, something like that. I mean,
No, it's not the content of what they said so much as you would like them to have said it in a more flowery fashion.
better vibe. Yeah. Let's get the vibe. There was another big apology within the last week at the Olympics. What do we think about that?
Which one?
Oh, well, there was more than one actually, but the one I was thinking about was the fact that they apologized for part of the opening ceremony, which depicted what looked like a dinner table with Dionysus kind of spread out on the thing, and everybody thought it was the Last Supper. And in their apology, they failed to say, well, that really wasn't the Last Supper. They apologized as if it really was the Last Supper.
Wasn't there some argument it's not the Last Supper that we were taking off on? It was the painting of the Last Supper or something like that?
No, it was a Greek festival of Dionysus, as I understood it. That blue guy who was sprawled out on the table, that big Smurf-looking guy, was actually supposed to be Dionysus, and all those other people were I think other Greek gods. And I mean, the guy who actually created the thing said that was what it was supposed to be, but the Olympic organization apologized as though it really had been a depiction of the Last Supper. I don't think that maybe they didn't even realize what their art director had set up.
Yeah, I don't think they were really sorry. I mean, I think that it was one of those classic, sorry if you're mad, geez.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, I'm expecting to hear more apologies because of the accommodations that the Olympic athletes are being given, your cardboard beds and stuff that was catered to them in a big, basically Olympic-sized dining hall. That apparently the food was rather inedible, and I just can't imagine them, being able to defend against it. I mean, a cardboard bed, really?
You know, my father used to say, when the architects get prizes, the people suffer. And I think design went mad. But they started importing actual edible food in reasonable amounts because athletes really need that.
But they won't apologize for, of course. There's a story in The Guardian this morning about all the sort of homeless and other marginalized communities were kind of moved out of the way for the Olympics. And I remember when the games came to London, they were demanding that streets be closed off so that they would be for the exclusive use of IOC members and stuff. So, the Olympics always have a lot to apologize for that they never apologize for.
Yeah, yeah. I can. I think if we weighed the metric tons of apologies that each Olympics produces or demands, because a lot of those apologies are never issued, it would be quite impressive.
Yeah.
And no coffee.
Well,
No,
if you've been stuck in an airport for 2 days, would you feel better that a company you had never heard of offered you a $10 Uber Eats voucher?
I would not feel better. Would I use the voucher? I probably would, but it would not make me feel like they cared about me. Well, actually, I wouldn't, because I don't patronize Uber. So
Well, neither do I. But if you were stuck in an airport and you were desperate, you might.
I would give it to somebody else, and then they would say, "Hey, it was refused," and then I would really be mad.
I'd give it to somebody else, exit the airport, and go home. I try never to fly out of a city where I don't have somebody I can go impose myself upon if something goes wrong at the airport, because I'm allergic to sitting in a congested airport.
Yeah.
Or spending the night in one, for that matter,
Oh my gosh.
which
I
has
once
happened before.
I once had Richard Stallman come and stay at my house for a day because I felt bad for him that he was stuck at Heathrow for 9 hours or something.
I bet that was interesting.
Yeah, he sat in the living room and he read books all day. That was
Yeah,
fun.
it sounds like Stallman.
That
Well, there was
sounds
another
civilized.
big apology this week, which was J.D. Vance's apology.
Wait, what? He apologized?
I just want to say that
He apologized. He apologized to cats.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
Yes.
I just
for
wanted
his-
to say that I'm a childless sociopath whose cats have run away.
And you vote?
And I vote.
Yeah, I think the Crowdstrike apology really highlights some of the issues with corporate apology, in that oftentimes the person making the apology is a spokesperson who's maybe a 23-year-old out of communication school. And they're like, I can't say bad things about the company. So we'll just say if anyone was adversely impacted in any way, we feel terrible. There's also, the problem that a lot of those people who are in fact executives have absolutely no training in making an apology. Maybe they don't make apologies in daily life, and it doesn't occur to them that spending most of your apology talking about your own personal suffering and anguish isn't the best strategy.
It's interesting to me that there's actually people who will not make an apology, and I'm thinking about Trump, but I know there's a bunch of people like that, and it seems strange. It seems strange to have that as sort of your position, that you're not going to apologize for anything.
It does. It's very strange, and it's not that rare. And the question that I ask is, how does that break down politically? Is one party more likely to feel that way than the other? I don't know. I mean, one party may have different messaging about apologies. Never back down, never seem weak. We don't do that. But I don't know that that applies to individuals.
Yeah, I think I was watching Donald Trump light into the one of the moderators on that black journalist conference panel the other day, and I think he was trying to get her to apologize for him for asking a tough question, and of course she wasn't going to. And of course, you don't have any apologies from him for pretty much anything. I was looking for one. I was trying to find an apology from Trump, and apparently he made something that resembled an apology after the Access Hollywood tape was released, but it wasn't a very good apology, I didn't think. You recall that?
Saying, that's just guy talk. That's not an apology. I did read that he once, years and years ago, apologized to his first wife, Ivana, for something. And he has said, I will apologize if I'm wrong. I'm just not wrong. So
He's a very stable genius. You said that quite often the apology for a company is devised by 23-year-olds fresh out of comm school. I'm a little surprised to hear that, because I would have thought in the case of a worldwide outage like this one, you would call in your most senior, the most senior people would want to sign off on anything that was actually published. And as time has gone on and it's become more obviously serious, I would have expected them to hire, I don't know, maybe Olivia Pope from the TV show Scandal, or somebody like that.
you're not wrong. And indeed, in this case where we have the CEO and the CSO both apologizing promptly, that's a good example of that. But then I don't think that they were the ones who came up with the ideas of the $10 Uber Eats certificates for cups of coffee. I think that was their existing PR department.
Really, you think it was a PR person? Because it seems like such a tech bro thing. It seems like the kind of thing a CEO, I mean, the CEO of Crowdstrike has there's the journalist Quinn Norton has published a history of his hacking, his early hacking stuff before he became, sort of respectable. And it sounds to me just so much like the kind of thing that, a programmer would think of, that he would think of other programmers having to stay up all night and be really tired. And he would think of cups of coffee and Mountain Dew, not Mountain Dew. What's the stuff? Is it Red Bull that it has all the caffeine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know the answer. I don't know who at CrowdStrike came up with this, but it totally sounds to me like a PR department move. And you go, oh my God, this is huge. The CEO, the security guy, we have to apologize. And then we can turn it over to these people that we hired for this exact purpose. And they're like, gift certificates.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of corporate apologies. I like to read all of them. And it seems like the apology level rolls uphill. It starts in the poor little guy or woman that's, in the PR department, and they have to do something and answer when the calls start coming in. But when it's not working, then it begins to roll uphill, and you'll eventually maybe get to the top. The people at the very top of the corporate ladder are hoping that someone else will cure it before it gets to them, and they have to wear the problem.
Yeah, I think that's really true. We've at Sorry Watch, we've looked at a lot of cases where first you have some underling, or probably someone who was just described as a spokesperson, saying, well, that was a shame, but that's not our, we're sorry if you took it bad, but we didn't do anything wrong. And because they're not out there to make the company look bad, and they're usually like, oh no, what do I do? And then it goes up and up and up, and finally, someone fairly high up who can be called a boss steps in and says, oh, no, we're taking complete responsibility, which they may or may not actually be doing, but they love to say that they are.
Yeah, when it starts to impact the people that have profit sharing, then it becomes a big, serious problem.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's one of those
those are
favorite
their true
corporate lines.
constituents in many cases.
Sorry, that's one of those favorite corporate lines, isn't it? We are taking full responsibility. It's right up there with your call is very important to us.
Yeah, our system is being updated, Wendy.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's it is often said by people who clearly have no idea what it means to take responsibility, but it sounds good. And we want them to take responsibility, so it's good if they say it, right?
It sounds like Lena Khan at the FTC is going to push them, try to force them to take responsibility.
Yeah, well, that indeed will be very interesting to see, and it will be interesting to see what they say if that happens.
Well, I think she's got more leverage. I actually don't think she's said anything. Well, what she said about this case was that the concentration, the industry concentration makes it fragile, which is what I was going to write in Net Wars. But I was also, the other thing I'm going to write in Net Wars, which is that we are stuck with it. You know, we're never going to go back to having 20 or 30 operating systems, let alone a few thousand, you know. And so we're going to have to, we're really going to have to up the game in terms of how we manage all these this very kind of monoculture of computer systems. But she did have something, Lena Khan did have something to say about the AT&T outage, which was in February. And I remember the reason I found out about it is there's this guy named Lauren Weinstein who publishes privacy related newsletter. He pushes out editions all the time. And he said, there's this big outage, AT&T outage that's affecting wireless subscribers. Prediction, it's a software update. And it was a bungled software update. And for about 12 hours, a bunch of people couldn't make calls. Their phones couldn't connect to the AT&T network. And they estimate that about 25,000 attempted calls to 911 failed during that time.
Yeah.
And so Khan has said publicly that she wants to hold companies like this more accountable for this kind of failure. Now, what form that will take, whether she plans to fine them or whether there's going to be more legal sanctions, I don't know. But that's what she said. There was an apology connected to that one too, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. I think this, but I'll say that a lot of people refuse updates for as long as they can because they fear that the updates will make things worse, not in a dramatic way like the Crowdstrike thing or the AT&T thing, but just in a little like, where is my mail? Where are my messages? If I put it off, maybe they'll have fixed it by the time I actually accept the update. I'm forced to accept the update.
Yeah, we had a similar kind of thing happen with Spectrum Cable, which is also the internet service provider here in Central Texas, and it actually shut down, pretty much all of Texas for a long period of time. And I tried calling their customer service number, knowing it was an exercise in futility. And of course, instead of the usual, we, really want to handle your call, but we're having, a lot of calls coming in. Instead of that kind of thing, it just said, we can't take your call now, and it hung up. That's just all it was. And it's like, well, that was a interesting approach. They apparently just couldn't deal with it at all because their call centers were just melting down because they didn't have internet either.
How would you if you got a message that said, we can't take your call right now, we're totally slammed?
It would have been better just being, we can't take your call. Bye. That
Did
was
they say something like, "We're aware of the problem"?
they weren't
That's
aware.
what they usually do.
Yeah, this was an escalation, or actually a downgrade from that.
Oh my Lord. Well, I don't think we ever heard an apology for that either, or even really a good explanation. I heard rumors of things about the storms in Houston causing an outage that cascaded. What do you think, Scoop? Did you
Yeah,
hear anything more than that?
that was pretty much it. Their satellite uplink in Houston was drowned out by the storm, and they tried to transfer all the functionality to Dallas, and Dallas crashed as well. So it was just like, it was like the dominoes were all falling, and it didn't get uh, addressed for quite some time. Yeah, I was able to keep myself entertained. A lot of people who rely on the internet for entertainment were just freaking out.
Yeah,
So the question is, should they have apologized?
yes. Yes, they should have. Um, I was thinking, Scoop, of your thing about how the apologies roll uphill in the context of an apology that I'm writing up for Sorry Watch. Very, very different scale. A woman who was getting married went to buy a pair of shoes for her fancy wedding outfit. And she decided, well, this is my wedding. I'm spending a lot of money already. I will buy some really expensive shoes that I will be able to wear again on dressy occasions, so it won't be such a ridiculous thing. She ended up buying $1,000 pair of Jimmy Choos and took them in their box to her fitting because they had to be just the right height for her bustle, because of course one wears a bustle. And then her mother, she wore the shoes for maybe 5 minutes. The heels were just the right height. They were comfortable. And her mother looked at the front of the one and said, there's a tear here. She was very upset. She called the store. They said, yeah, no, we don't do anything about normal wear and tear. And she was like, it was 5 minutes. And so she went down to the store and she talked to an employee who said, oh, you already wore these shoes. Ordinarily we wouldn't take them back, but we do have another pair in your size. So just this once, we'll make a swap. They brought out the other pair of shoes. They were the right size, but the little fake pearl strap that decorates them was dangling loose. And she said, they're broken. I won't accept this. I want a refund. We don't do refunds. Only the manager can do refunds. All right, let me talk to the manager. They said, we will have the manager call you. They're not in the store. The manager didn't call. A few days passed. She called. And finally, she went down to the store again. She got the manager, and the manager was like, this is not a thing we do. You did wear these shoes. And she said, yeah, I've been posting about it on TikTok. And the manager was like, okay, we'll give you a refund just this once. And by the time she had 9 million views on TikTok, she got a call from the president of Jimmy Choo's. She got a call from the regional manager. They sent her a replacement pair of shoes. They sent her a free handbag. So that's a case of the apologies rolling uphill, because the foot soldiers, the people in the store and the managers in the store, they just really, I'm not being paid to give people refunds, is essentially their thinking.
Well, it's also that if the company policy is against refunds, they're not paid to lose their job either, and that I'm sure is a fear for a lot of them. But I think it's also interesting. This is something I talk about a lot. Is this sort of sedimentary layers of social media that today it's TikTok and 9 million viewers, and 5 years ago it would have been Twitter and probably fewer followers, but Twitter was read by all the journalists, and before that it would be it's just interesting. You can practically carbon date people by which is their preferred social medium. But it's TikTok.
Had she said, I've been posting about this on MySpace,
they would have laughed at her, but she might have gotten traction with Instagram. And I mean, the thing that Instagram and TikTok have in common is that they're visual media. So, as soon as you say one of those two things, they know there's going to be pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And, so in TikTok's case, there'll be a loving video showing exactly the tear, you know.
Social media, gets a lot of bad press because of its impact. But I think the fact that you can finally get traction against these big companies when you have a problem. uh, Prior to social media, you really didn't, you could do a letter writing campaign, but yeah, how often did that happen? And how many letters could you get written to someone in your defense? But social media came along, and you suddenly had a way to really turn these people on when it becomes a problem and they're not addressing it, and it becomes public knowledge that they're not addressing it. Then suddenly you get some action.
My feeling is that started with CompuServe, um, because that was the service where a lot of companies actually did have forums of their own, and you could actually embarrass them in front of the people that they cared about. And they used to be a lot of them used to be quite responsive on CompuServe, but most more technical companies than somebody like Jimmy Choo, I guess.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
wondering, is this relevant at all to CrowdStrike?
Um, it pro- it would not surprise me if turns out that the first intimation they had that it was a big problem was people's posting on social media. Certainly people stuck in airports were posting.
Right.
Um, and technical staff, I mean, I don't know. If you're a technical staff, your first thought is, okay, it's something wrong with the computer. Then it cycles. Then every time you cycle it, you still get the crash. So then you start calling people.
Well, if you have the blue screen of death, you're going to have to get on social media on your phone and say, what the
Yeah,
heck?
I think you're more likely to make a phone call to whoever your upstream technical support is and say, I don't know what's going on here. And if you're in a company that's large enough, you're going to see if you're the help desk in a large company, you're going to be getting calls from people all over the company. Right?
Yeah, yeah. And you're going to say, I'm sorry, we don't know what's wrong. It wasn't us.
Right.
We take
And
no
then,
responsibility.
and then you try to figure out who to call.
Yeah.
I would
And
imagine these companies, like CrowdStrike, are keeping an eye on the postings from well-known tech journalists and tech critics that are out there. It's one thing if they get an angry posting on X from Farmer Fred in Iowa, but one from someone at Wired or one of the other publications, they're going to pay attention to those postings.
well, I think they might pay attention to one from somebody at Delta Airlines who says we got 1,000 PCs out just in our department. We don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I would hope so. I think they would probably also look at Reddit, if they've got any sense.
Well, Reddit is not. Yeah, they probably would, but at the same time, Reddit is not as Reddit as it used to be.
Maybe Stack Exchange.
Yeah,
I don't know. When
there's
people
probably a
experience
Discord.
when
Sorry.
people experience an apparent Microsoft problem, they try to contact Microsoft, and and I would imagine that those lines were pretty full, so people were probably having a lot of trouble getting through and getting any kind of comprehension of the problem that they were encountering.
Right. I don't think people's first thought would be, this must be our security company.
Yeah.
In fact, they probably were more likely to think, oh, cyber attack, we're really in trouble.
That actually might be the thing that people posted. I mean, I don't know. I mean, a lot of technical people are Mastodon now, or or Slack, if it's a company thing. I mean, it seems to me that yeah, if people thought it was a cyber attack, they might well post to some place like Mastodon and to find out who else was experiencing trouble, because that's part of how you figure out you know, first you want to know it's not just you. Then you want to know it's not just your company. And then you want to sort of make a map of the companies and figure out what they have in common.
I think by that time you will have gotten word that it was Crowdstrike by the time you're making that map.
Yeah, very possibly. I'm trying to think how I first heard about it, and I think I first read about it on Mastodon, where somebody was saying, that any company that allowed automated updates without checking deserved what they got, and a bunch of people piling on and saying, well, that's really not fair because that's how security software works. You want it to update in real time because that's when the threats come. Or that's how the threats.
Yeah. Well, it would be, I imagine that at some point they will CrowdStrike may put out a really detailed analysis of what it was that went wrong, which when they do that, they're not going to be able to say, this was just a bug that we found.
No, I don't think they are saying that. I think they've been pretty clear that it was an employee error. Well, you might be right. Maybe they've only said that deploying it was an employee error.
Yeah. I think it was Kurtz's apology where he said, we came across this. We found this.
I was just showing there is an explanation on their site. It's fairly detailed. And of course, the statement from their CEO. I don't think they've handled it badly. It's just that it was such a substantial issue. How do you recover from something like that? Even if you make a truly excellent apology, it was just so terrible.
That's the problem. Is how do you construct an apology that is proportionate to the damage that was done?
Right.
And I don't think an apology can do it. I think it's like Boeing actually, where two planes crashed and people died, and what apology is going to be proportionate to that? Instead, it has to be years of good behavior into the future.
Well, when we talk about apologies, we have a number of steps, and some of the steps that come towards the end are not relevant to a lot of personal apologies. But one of the things you do is you say why it won't happen again. And you need to be very clear and transparent and have a good answer for why it won't happen again. And then the final step there is reparations. And this is not going to be cheap.
This makes me think about, you remember Failsafe? This was a novel, and it was made into a movie in the 50s or whatever. My recollection is that we accidentally bombed Moscow. So at the end of the movie, the way that we responded was by bombing New York too, to
level the playing
as retribution, basically. Yeah,
literally.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good answer to personally.
No,
No, I
like
know.
that one. Yeah, no, the thing that I was referencing in Kurtz's apologies, he said the outage was caused by a defect found in a Falcon content update for Windows hosts. Mac and Linux were not impacted. This was not a cyber attack, but it was caused by a defect found in a content, found? How did it get there? And there's no reason to think that somebody put it there maliciously. Who would benefit from that?
Yeah, in these cases, it's usually blamed on some poor programmer who, put in the wrong value of in their code, and it caused a problem. But the real problem is still they didn't test. And in the world of corporate IT, that's a big crime, not testing the product before it impacts your business and your customers. And I sat in the chair of a quality assurance testing, and it was scary because you did not want to have to explain to the CEO, well, we blew up a hospital's computer system because we didn't test.
No,
Well,
hundreds of hospitals. Yeah.
testing the software is one thing, and then you also have to sort of field test it. And this was so. I was in a discussion with some other tech people earlier this week where they were talking about how normally what you would do is you would stage the distribution of the software, and you would spot that at the first stage, when it was first loaded on a computer. And that they apparently didn't have a staging process. Well, in fact, they did normally do staging, but apparently they excluded this particular instance that caused the problem was excluded from staging. As I read it, it was because they thought it was so similar to instances that had already been released that it would just be okay. And what that tells you is that you have to just be very particular about testing everything and staging everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the temptation always, isn't it, to take shortcuts and save time and therefore a bit of money.
Move fast. We won't break things. Yeah. I have to disagree, Wendy. I think that if they apologized better, it could have serious value for their company and help keep them from going under, for example. I think if they were very serious about and since the reparations step is part of what we think makes a good apologies, I think they would take a huge financial hit if they did decent reparations, which their shareholders would not like. But I think they could do that. I think that would make people trust the company more, that it was willing to take a huge financial hit when it caused huge financial hits for its customers, many of its customers.
I don't know how wealthy a company it is.
I don't know either. I guess those who are suing are about to find out.
Well, presumably there is such a thing as cyber insurance, and I don't know. I don't think companies can insure themselves against their employees making errors, but
Well, that is a pretty interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, their contract, as we know, is written to say, oh, we'll give you your fees back. But, if people are suing you because the surgeries were delayed, if people are suing you because they spent the nights in the airport, that's not on us.
I would hope their apologies are aimed at, letting people know that they really are sorry. But I know what's happening in their business. Their competitors, I'm sure, are just rejoicing and trying to figure out how they can capitalize on this really bad mistake.
Yeah, I'll bet they are. And I would assume that they would be boasting about how they test everything multiple times before they send it out.
Well, I think even if you weren't rejoicing, I think if you're the smart competitor, and I don't actually know who their competitors are, but I think if you were a smart competitor, you would be proactively sending your customers an email saying, this is why this is not going to happen with us.
Right.
Because I mean, in cybersecurity, you really have to trust your suppliers,
Yeah, and if you were a competitor, you could say, why don't you sit down and look at what we offer and what Crowdstrike offers, and here's a certificate for some coffee.
That'd be great.
$20 certificate.
We give it to you for no reason.
Yeah, except that giving it to the programmer at the coalface doesn't really do much because they're not the guys who make the decisions about procurement.
Sure doesn't help the end user. We have reached the end of the hour, by the way. And I want to thank you very much, Susan, for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thanks for reminding me to be better with my apologies, especially here at home. I'm not real good at that sometimes.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
there's a book. You don't need it, but it's got some good stories in it.
I love the fact that you have to say you don't need it. I think it'd be more tempting to wait until somebody's apologized for something and then hand them the book.
I can't tell you how much. I can tell you how much your book has helped me not be an asshole.
Okay, that's a great testimonial.
Right on. Well, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay. See you. Bye-bye.
You can stay in touch with Plutopia at plutopia.io. On Facebook, look for @Plutopia News. On Twitter, it's @Plutopia. This is the Plutopia News Network, 20 minutes into the future.